All right, let's go ahead and get started. So, record button is hit. Thank you all so much for joining today. My name is Remy Sabori. I will be the MC for today's session with NeuroStrategy, Service Performance Advisors, Tundra Solutions, and PTC. I am the Partner Marketing Manager here at PTC, and we want to go ahead and, before we go ahead and get started and introduce the panel, I want to go ahead and get started with just some quick housekeeping notes. First off, we are recording this webinar, and we will have a replay available after the event. All participants currently are on mute, and if you do have any questions to provide back to us, I will be monitoring them, and then we'll be clearing all questions at the end of the session. And with any technical issues on your end, feel free to shoot me a text right now. Contact information is below, or shoot me an email. I have my inbox wide open and here to solve any technical issues. And for today's lineup, so as I said, star-studded lineup we have. First off, we have Bill Durrand and Dave Bohne, both partners from NeuroStrategy Incorporated. And our featured guest is Blaine Barnes, VP of Marketing and Strategic Initiatives over at Tundra Process Solutions. And from the PTC side, we have Greg Folks on our PTC AR and IoT Solutions team up in Canada. And finally, we have Anthony Garner from our PTC Virtual Center of Excellence, our fantastic technical team. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to Mr. Bill Durrand, who's going to get us going.
Thank you, Remy, and welcome everybody. So we do have a full agenda today, but we will try to finish a few minutes early if we can. In today's webcast, we are going to be covering what we are seeing as the leading practices emerging in technician training, with a focus on what we're seeing in the use of augmented reality in response to COVID. As Remy had mentioned, we do have Blaine Barnes with us today from Tundra Process Solutions. He will share his experiences. And we have Greg Folks and Anthony Garner from PTC, who will go deeper on Vuforia expert capture that has proven to be a high-value tool in the face of the COVID challenges. A reminder, if you do have questions as the webinar progresses, you can use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen to log the questions. We will cover them in a segment at the end of the webinar. So just to set the stage, what we've been seeing for quite some time is an accelerating movement towards the use of technologies like IoT and augmented reality in supporting technician tasks and training. But what's become really clear to us is that COVID has seriously hastened that journey for thousands of companies. As the COVID crisis set in, knowledge workers, so those that primarily work from a keyboard, already had many tools at the ready to support the continued productivity from home. We had video conferencing, email, social media, other collaboration tools. These all helped functions like sales and marketing, accounting, IT, to prove that distributed teams can be highly effective remotely. But on the other hand, we have in the workforce globally, about 75% of the workforce consists of frontline workers, and their job is done in the real world. It involves physical work. They're laying their hands on equipment. In May of this year, Michael Porter of Harvard and the PTC CEO, Jim Heppelman, published research through the Manufacturing Leadership Journal highlighting how augmented reality has really become the equivalent of those tools that the knowledge workers had available, the equivalent of video conferencing and email. Augmented reality is now really rising to the forefront as the tool that enables the on-the-ground workers. So as COVID progressed, and prior to COVID, we saw a number of challenges that were becoming prominent, challenges that most organizations were trying to deal with from a training perspective. COVID has magnified some of those. There were already lengthy onboarding periods that were required for technicians that have been further stretched by COVID for reasons such as the inability to gather in classroom settings. With social distancing, we couldn't send technicians out, pair them with veteran technicians for on-the-job training. Companies have been struggling with quarantines and furloughs, and this has accelerated the need to transition even larger volumes of skills into the hands of fewer people that are on the ground. While at the same time as we're training those people, we have customer restrictions, cutbacks, which means that we train people on their tasks, and we have less ability to actually let them cement those tasks by doing them in the field. So knowledge retention has really become a serious issue during COVID. This is an interesting graphic. Without some mechanisms to reinforce learning, you can expect that as you train technicians, after they're finished the training, about 50% of that lost in an hour, about 70% will be lost within 1 day, and about 90% of that knowledge will be lost within 1 week. So I'm just pausing for a moment for that to sink in. I think it's pretty easy to recognize that the cost associated with lost knowledge, after we spent the time and money and energy on conducting the training, is certainly important. But equally as important is the ability to have an effective workforce in the field. When we train them, we're training them for a purpose. So how do you combat this rapid post-training knowledge loss? Some of the common responses. So there's a host of tried and true methods for reinforcing learning and driving increased pace of skill development overall. Having structured curriculums, defined skill progressions for technicians, formal competency assessments. You can layer various types of knowledge provisioning and methods for learning, and that helps to reinforce the retention of the knowledge. Most organizations are trying to incorporate fun, some gamification, some sense of accomplishment that goes beyond just simply learning the training. A lot of organizations are also just making a self-serve model available, on-demand training, where your people can select and drive at their own pace, and they can kind of move forward on a choose-your-own-adventure. But what, again, is really becoming clear is that augmented reality is continuing to prove itself as the new rising star. It can reduce onboarding time, the cost associated with that, and probably equally as important, augmented reality transitions with technicians out into the field after they've completed their learning. It brings them productively to bear much quicker, and it allows them to have much more confidence as they approach tasks and new equipment for the first time. So at this point here, I'd like to introduce Blaine Barnes. Blaine joins us today from Tundra Process Solutions, and he's going to share a dialogue with us on some of their experiences pre and during COVID. Blaine is the VP of Marketing and Strategic Initiatives at Tundra. He's been with Tundra for 19 years, and as an instrumentation engineering technologist and journeyman instrumentation technician, Blaine was Tundra's first service technician. Blaine has experienced the challenges firsthand as a technician, but now as a senior executive driving marketing and strategy for Tundra, he confronts these challenges at an organizational level. So just before we get started with the interview, I'll remind the participants again that if you have any questions that you would like to ask Blaine, you can post them in the Q&A panel. Blaine, are you with us here, or are you off mute?
I am, I think I'm off mute. How do I sound? Good?
Perfect. So Tundra is actually quite an interesting company to me. It's based here in Calgary. It has a diverse suite of products, parts, and services that you provide. Can you tell us a little bit more about Tundra?
Well, I guess the simple answer is that we're a distributor of industrial process equipment. That's equipment that's used in oil and gas, petrochemical, pulp and paper, municipal facilities, water and wastewater. But we're not like many distribution companies where we're just a warehouse and an online ordering system. We actually have a fairly large service team. We have several dozen technicians located throughout Western Canada. And then via one of our subsidiary companies, SSI Lift, we actually go right down into the Permian Basin, so all the way down to Texas. And then, as I mentioned, we get involved in a lot of different industries, and that means a lot of different products. So we can sell things that are as small as a sensor or a valve, or they might be as large as a boiler that's as big as a building. So it's quite an interesting company in terms of distribution. We also play in some new technology initiatives, most recently some battery energy storage systems to help with the renewables and power generation and the grid. So really a unique distribution company is what we are. That's my long-winded answer.
No, it's actually quite intriguing. You do support a wide array of equipment and processes. You have in-house technicians at Tundra that you support in your own workforce, and at the same time you provide training to customers as you equip them with some complicated pieces of machinery and equipment. So can you tell us a little bit about the key challenges that you faced in managing those complex training needs and how you've overcome them to provide the exceptional customer experience that you provide today?
That's a great question. A little bit of preamble to that. So we are a distributor, and that means we sell things that are similar to what others sell as well. And ultimately, these items provide the same end result. If you're trying to measure pressure, you measure pressure, they measure pressure. And I feel like our products offer more benefit than others. But really, what we need to do is we need to focus on the people aspect, because so many of us sell such similar items. So Tundra really focuses on working with our clients. No preconceived notions, no sense of entitlement. We want to work with them and really understand their processes, their operations, their efficiencies, and what their goals are. But there are challenges with that. In Alberta and Canada in general, distance and geography, I mean, those play a big factor. We're not a densely populated country. So that is definitely something that we need to be aware of. And then timing. You've got thousands of facilities to work with and dozens of technicians. And while that's a strong workforce in the field, we might be helping with preventative maintenance at one site, and a power surge takes out a piece of equipment at another site thousands of miles away. And so you can see the logistics involved in maybe scheduling specialists and then having them respond to emergencies. It can be difficult with that time and distance between. So training is certainly important for us. It's important for our clients. We need them to be educated. We want them to be comfortable with our equipment in the facility. We're not keeping any secrets. We share that information willingly. And the better that their facility and their plant actually runs, the more efficient it is, and the better it is for everybody in the community. But training also can be tough. Sometimes a piece of equipment is only available on site. Sometimes they would actually prefer training at a facility in Calgary, for example. But sometimes that training requires high pressure process fluid or something that's hazardous to really be of benefit to work on this expensive piece of equipment. And you can't necessarily simulate that in a training room. So we're always looking to offer on-site and off-site training to accommodate these client needs.
Okay, so COVID has posed some new challenges for organizations around the world to overcome. I know that you have begun using augmented reality as part of your response to the COVID pressures. Can you tell us about how COVID affected Tundra's technician training and support, and how you responded overall? And as you do that, I'll ask if you can share some of your insights into augmented reality and some of your success stories with it during COVID as you do that.
Sure. Yeah, that's again a really great question. Like many people, COVID hit us from the side. We didn't see it coming. You heard a little bit about it. You didn't do much to prep for it, and then at the very last minute, you scrambled. And I feel like we have a great team, and it's a testament to that great team that we were able to get up and remote work in very short order. It was specifically COVID that resulted in this rapid review and adoption of different solutions that many of us are now familiar with. And in particular for us, it was augmented reality as well, which was interesting. We had casually looked at a few options, and we ended up going with a Vuforia platform to solve a few hiccups in the field while we weren't allowed to travel, while we couldn't be on site, and while internally we have disallowed air travel. So augmented reality was definitely something that came up really almost out of nowhere and was very quickly adopted. One of the first times that we used augmented reality, we were using the Vuforia chalk platform to kick things off. And one of our junior technicians was up on site in a remote northern Alberta facility. So we're talking about a 15-hour drive from Calgary. And it really, with no flights, it was not convenient for people to just run back and forth the way it used to be with an hour-and-a-half flight. And in this instance, the client had a brand new, fairly high-tech flow meter in line. And it has a lot of diagnostics and a lot of intelligence behind it, but that requires some programming. And on-site staff was slim, and our tech had limited experience in this case. But using augmented reality, we were actually able to get this technician in contact with one of our senior technicians, and that senior technician was able to walk the on-site personnel through the startup and the commissioning, the diagnostics, and all the regulatory and compliance requirements from the government as if they were standing right there looking over the person's shoulder. It was fantastic. I've got one other story. If I have a minute to tell you about this other one, it's neat as well.
Absolutely.
This other one is our subsidiary, SSI Artificial Lift Systems. We sell these reciprocating pump jacks to pull oil out of the ground. They replace the old pump jacks that people might be familiar with as you drive down the highway that have existed for 100 years. And one of these systems was sold to a client in Colombia. So 6,000 miles away, this pump jack was installed. But the folks on site there had never seen one before. And the system is, again, smart. It's literally packed with intelligence, measurements and diagnostics and efficiency. And it can be monitored from anywhere in the world. But as you can imagine, having a brand new piece of high-tech equipment, you bring it home, you have an instruction manual that's originally written in English. So there's a language barrier there. You've never seen this before, and you're used to installing these mechanical components, and here's this high-tech pump jack. It can be quite intimidating. It can be quite interesting, and they're expensive. I mean, these are worth 6 figures. You can't just hit a go button. And so that is definitely a concern. So while COVID hit, while the travel bans are on, and while these borders are up and closed, we actually used, again, augmented reality to walk the client through the finalizing of the installation, the startup of the unit, the operation of the unit, and the training. So 6,000 miles away. They literally installed a brand new high-tech pump jack technology in a matter of hours using augmented reality. And we used it because of COVID, where previously we would have spent thousands of dollars on flights, had to insure work visas, had to add extra time onto the trips and account for training on site and all that. We were able to do it right over their shoulder using AR, which is a pretty neat success story.
That is actually a very powerful story. Actually, it's a story that resonates well, I think, both in and out of COVID restrictions, to be honest. But I'll ask you one final question, which is if I can get you to look forward in time, peer into your crystal ball. As we go forward, what would you see as being the role of augmented reality now that Tundra has sort of entered into the augmented reality fray and has used it in real life scenarios? What do you see as being the future of AR in training and onboarding?
Well, the future of AR, I think, is vast. The technology is no longer cost prohibitive. It's commercialized and available to be used with technology that everybody has typically in their pockets at a most basic level. You know, we used for that Colombian job a translator between with English and Spanish, and it still worked flawlessly. So looking into this crystal ball, seeing what we did from here in Canada to a foreign country with a language barrier and the successes, you can only see the use case for AR increasing moving forward. For technicians, to learn from other technicians, more senior technicians, or for clients to learn from subject matter experts or to receive training in the field on their actual equipment, not simulators or pictures or software or models, augmented reality just makes sense. It's certainly not going away. More people are definitely going to be using it once they realize the benefits. And I mean, since this COVID crisis started, we've trained over 1,000 people virtually through our education center using augmented reality. We just see, again, that use case increasing moving forward. It just makes so much sense now that it's commercialized and so readily accessible.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Blaine. Really appreciate your time here and your willingness to share your experiences with the audience. A reminder to everybody that if you do have questions that you would like to pose for Blaine, there's certainly some interesting stories there. You can use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. Now, next up, we have Dave Bohne from NeuroStrategy. Dave will be walking us through the case for augmented reality. Over to you, Dave.
Thanks, Bill. So yes, as Blaine talked about and Bill's introduced, we're talking about bringing digital technologies to the frontline worker. Frontline workers need knowledge in order to do their work, and obviously COVID has made equipping new workers with that knowledge much more difficult with travel restrictions and social distancing and other things like that. So, but you know, before COVID, we had a challenge anyway. You know, just in terms of the the skilled worker just not being able to retain the knowledge that they needed to do their job, not being able to gain the knowledge that they needed to do their job in a timely manner. And honestly, the shortage of workers that would be entering the technical trades was also a challenge that needed to be addressed. Traditional training methods, like you see on the left side of the screen there, paper, service manuals, whether they're stacks of manuals in the back of a service vehicle or digital. These types of traditional methods were being challenged before COVID, and now COVID has really made it much more difficult to get those workers up to speed. So we're really looking to evolve from the left side of the screen to the right side of the screen, which is, let's use augmented reality to provide a much richer, much more immersive experience for that technical worker, and evolve to methods that are a little more intuitive to the younger generation of worker that we're looking to introduce into the trades. So, as I mentioned, there was already challenges pre-COVID to this space. Products in the field, we continue to see the complexity of field assets increasing. It's just tougher to figure out how to maintain or service a piece of equipment as they get more and more complicated. The customers are demanding more and more from the service provider or the OEM when it comes to looking after those pieces of equipment. So really, COVID's forcing companies to find new ways to work. And it's also about that first graphic there showing the growing worker skills gap. So we've got a smaller number of experts, technicians out there, and a much larger group that is somewhere along their training and learning curve. And really what we're trying to do is take what those experts have in their heads in a lot of cases and try to transfer that knowledge down to the next generation of worker. This is a big challenge though, because in the next 1 to 2 years, it's estimated that 58% of the technical workforce will be eligible for retirement. And obviously those workers that retire, they're in many cases going to take that tribal knowledge that they've learned over years and it leaves with them. So challenge is, how do we grab that knowledge that's in those people's heads and all the great information that they have and do something with it and be able to use it for years to come. So a digital transformation of service is really what this is. And to equip that next generation of worker and give them in context of just-in-time training and knowledge assets, it's going to allow you to extend your technical workforce beyond maybe what you can do today. You know, sort of creating that Swiss Army knife of field worker that can do a lot more than maybe they've been able to do historically, with much less training up front. So this slide talks about some of the benefits of digital transformation from companies that have implemented AR into their training systems. So the statistics you see on the left side here really are what the survey respondents have experienced. So you're seeing 10 to 95% of response mean time to repair improvement. So that's basically the time an asset fails to the time that asset is fully operational pre-failure, reducing that mean time to repair. Big reduction in number of service calls in general. Obviously, if you're getting a first-time fix or if you're changing out the correct part instead of maybe pressing a reset button, and you're going to see a reduction in actual volume of service calls, which of course ties into first-time fix rate as well. The productivity of a new hire, again, just being able to reduce that training time, get a new person into the field and generating value quicker, that's one of the biggest benefits of AR. Reducing time to author content. We're going to hear in a few minutes from Greg Folk from PTC about a great solution that's available from Vuforia that will allow that knowledge to be captured from an expert in a very short amount of time, and then being able to offer that out to skilled worker, junior workers in the field in a much more immersive way. And the slide, the stat on the right I wanted to call out is that 66% of use cases where you're trying to do training classes without travel. You're trying to basically utilize AR where you just don't have an option to bring people together in a classroom setting anymore. And that's one of the main things that, as Blaine talked about, is kind of forcing companies into this digital world of service. So benefits of augmented reality, touched on a few here, but just to restate, it's really about reducing that new higher training time and accelerating the time from a time someone is in training mode into production mode, and taking that down in some cases by 50% or more. And I'm sure people on the line here can imagine if we're able to get a worker into the field in half the time that you would spend now to get somebody up to speed, just the tremendous impact that would have on your service profitability. It's a real game changer. And not to mention, as Bill said at the beginning, the knowledge retention is a huge thing. So instead of them forgetting, 70% of the information that they learned in a training class, it's really about having that training stick, because it's a much more immersive experience for training. And not to mention the COVID restrictions as well. Again, while we're living with COVID, no travel, minimize person-to-person contact. Again, AR's a great answer to COVID, although I'm sure that wasn't envisioned when some of these technologies were being developed. And the last couple of points I want to make before I hand it over to Greg, let's extend the useful life or the useful contributions of some of those technicians that are maybe nearing the end of their careers. Guys that are maybe getting close to retirement or possibly have a physical impairment that is stopping them from being able to deploy to doing service work that they used to. Well, there's lots of value those individuals can still bring to an organization. So we can really try to have them stay on and help that next generation of worker by capturing their knowledge. 11% reduction in technician overtime with remote AR assisted support. So obviously lots of service companies out there, overtime minimization is such a big factor. It's a cost factor, it's a safety factor when it comes to having that overtime within a reasonable tolerance. Let's make the trades more attractive to younger workers. Let's give them some technology that's kind of cool and kind of fits what they're looking for, fits what they do in their personal lives and what they're used to in terms of using technology. And finally, as I mentioned on the last slide, 20% increase in service profitability. I think that's actually a low number. I think that the increase in profits would be actually more significant if we really embraced what AR can bring to a service organization. And that's what this is all about. It's really about let's get to the next level of digital service transformation. So with that, back to you, Dave. Bill.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will provide one more comment on that attractiveness of the trades to younger workforce, because the trades, unfortunately, really are becoming less attractive as time goes by to the younger audiences, and creating some mechanism to increase that attractiveness, I think is super important, whether or not we're in a COVID scenario. That's just going to be one of the key challenges that I think service companies are going to have to face as time goes on, regardless. So thank you, Dave. And next, we are pleased to have Greg Folks with us from PTC. Greg is responsible in Canada for IoT, Internet of Things, and augmented reality solutions. Greg will walk us through a deeper dive into PTC's AR solutions with a focus on the technologies that have really been moving the needle the most for organizations during this COVID crisis. Over to you, Greg.
Yeah, awesome. Everyone can hear and see me okay?
We can.
Stuff. So first of all, great work, Dave, Bill. I think you guys really nailed some of the challenges teams are facing and the value of AR. So really good stuff. And Blaine, love those stories. So thank you. So as Bill mentioned, my name's Greg Folks. I'm responsible for our augmented reality sales across Canada. Also responsible for our Internet of Things solutions. But for today's purposes, I'll be focusing on AR. So PTC, for those who are unfamiliar, we're a global technology leader. We've been around for decades. We help companies design, manufacture, operate, and service what we refer to as things for a smart, connected world. And our message and one of our core focuses is pretty simple, and that's opportunities for industrial innovation live at the convergence of the physical and digital. That's really where the future is. So I don't think it would be a surprise for me to say that data is important, right? Data is good. Everyone knows that. And extracting data off of your assets, whether it be in a facility or in a factory, or if you have products out in the field, that allows companies to make really informed decisions, and smart decisions. And in a hyper-competitive world, every edge really counts. But once you have that digital twin, that's really only half of the story. Augmented reality is what allows you to take this rich data and push it back onto the physical world in a format that is natural and recognizable to human beings. And you can even see this story in PTC's logo. It's a play on the yin and yang, and you can even see a P and a D coming together. So physical and digital. So anyways, that's who we are in a quick little nutshell. So we have a suite of different AR tools. They're all serving different purposes and all requiring different levels of expertise. So I'm just going to briefly speak to this a little bit. So Vuforia Studio, that platform, this is the tool that can be used to create more what I call traditional AR experiences. So think about, Tony Stark, Iron Man, right? Interacting with digital information in a fixed space. That's essentially what Studio is. So if you have existing CAD data that can be leveraged, you can simply drag those files into Studio. You can do further manipulation on them. So animated sequences, work instructions. When combined with IoT, you can see real-time data right in front of you and get that situational awareness. So rapid decision-making, right? No longer having to go back to your workstation to log into your dashboard. You can get that information right in front of you. The Vuforia Chalk app. This is a remote assistance application. This allows new workers or even your customers to have a one-on-one call with an expert for issue resolution. What makes this really unique is that it's leveraging augmented reality on top of your typical audio-visual face call. So when that expert, for example, say you're working with a customer, when they mark up the screen and they make annotations, those annotations stay fixed in place. So the person they're supporting can walk around their environment, return back to that original place that the expert had a circle drawn on a certain switch, for example, and it stays fixed there. So it's a really exciting tool. It's getting a lot of usage right now during COVID-19, as you can imagine, with the inability to travel and with social distancing. Teams really need a way to support their customers, and often they're contractually obligated to. So huge value with Chalk for services teams right now. And by the way, Chalk's entirely free through the summer. We've made that fully available to anyone who wants to download and try it out. Vuforia Expert Capture. So this is what we're going to speak a little bit more to in a moment. Essentially, it's the easiest and fastest way to create, or I should say, to record and distribute work instructions, or SOPs. So you're putting a head worn on one of your workers and you're asking them to go about their job as they normally would, completely hands-free. They're using their voice to say things like next step, take picture, and all of this is being captured and pre-populated into the Expert Capture platform where you can then go edit and clean it up. So just a really quick quote, I kind of already spoke about this if you want to click forward here, Bill. Awesome. So we're going to spotlight expert capture for the last little bit here and do a short demo. So expert capture, I said it before, it's absolutely the hottest tool we have right now at PTC, that in shock, I would say. Companies need a way to capture procedures in an easy way and need a way to distribute those out to their workforce, who is often spread across multiple locations, even globally, or in different languages too, right? So I said it before, it's the fastest and easiest and most convenient authoring and publishing tool available today, where you can provide AR-guided expertise whenever and wherever it's needed. So the best practices of subject matter experts are captured while they work, simply using digital eyewear, and then these are then made available to any worker across the enterprise to perform that same procedure as efficiently and accurately as possible. Now, this is important because it rapidly makes the best practice of your experts become the standard practice of all your workers. So think about reducing time to productivity for new workers. We spoke about that before. Think about facilitating and distributing SOP documentation. Often it takes quite a bit of time to put that together in those more traditional formats that we spoke about. Our customers at PTC, they're improving first-time fix rates. They're seeing higher customer satisfaction as a result, obviously. And meanwhile, a great bonus, especially ensuring safety and compliance adherence. That's a really big one. And often we develop business cases strictly focused on safety and compliance with expert capture. So a lot of benefits of expert capture, and it's really, really exciting stuff. When we say it's easy, we really mean it's easy. So in fact, that's a core focus. You actually talked about this a little bit, Bill, with the younger generation. That's a core focus and differentiator for PTC, is that we recognize human beings, especially in 2020, they expect their tools to work and to be as quick as the apps on their phone. That's the way I think about it, right? Especially for those millennials who grew up with iPhones. They have this certain level of expectation. So we recognize that a tool like expert capture needs to be easy to use for adoption. So it's a three-step process, really. Step one is capturing that work procedure. All you need is a compatible headset, RealWear, Microsoft HoloLenses. We have really close partnerships with those two hardware companies. Step two is enhancing or editing those steps. So you can clip videos, you can add text, you can add other files to each step, like images or drawings. And step three is publishing and distributing that out. That's kind of that end result. It can be consumed in multiple formats, as you can see here. In fact, about 75–80% of expert capture users right now are using their smartphones or tablets to access these procedures. So you don't need a head warm for everyone. Your employees can simply leverage the phones that are in their pockets, which makes things really easy. But of course, expert capture can be consumed on head warms as well. And I think Anthony's going to run through a little bit of an expert capture demo. But that's in a very short nutshell. That's really some of the tools that we have here at PTC. And we've already talked about a lot of these business benefits, but maybe I'll stress a little bit again. There's a lot of different areas that can be improved across an organization using a tool like Capture. You think about the time to edit and record and build those procedures. You think about the ability to distribute those out, actually consuming that content, what's going to resonate for new workers, even coming back to work procedures that we're already tapped into. If you need to remind yourself about something, how do you easily access that without having to, go find that original PowerPoint deck or manual that you trained on? And it's not uncommon for us to really build the business case around just one or two of these points. Because when you really extrapolate the amount of workers at a lot of organizations that are being trained and using these tools, the numbers get pretty big. And the ROIs that we see off of using these tools is really exciting to me.
All right, thank you, Greg. And I'll reiterate one other point, or emphasize one other point, which is that the first time that I ever laid eyes on expert capture being deployed, we have a technician that's somewhat hesitant or reluctant to put on a wearable, and geez, this isn't me, and then to train them on using that, see them being trained on using that, them walking through a procedure, documenting all of the work steps, adding all the annotations, and then to see it cleaned up and then published, and to see this all happen from start to finish in a 3 to 4 hour period for the very first experience, it really does make you realize that, you know, all those companies or people out there that are thinking, you know, AR is great, but it's hard, it's difficult, it's time consuming, it's costly. You know, this really is a game-changing technology that brings access to augmented reality to, you know, more of the common folk, so to speak. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. And
Yeah.
I will unshare my screen at this time. I will hand control over to Anthony. Reminder again, as I do that to all participants, that if you have questions, you can log them using the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. And with us here today next is Anthony Garner. Anthony Garner comes to us from PTC's Virtual Center of Excellence. He's a technical specialist in PTC's augmented reality and IoT solutions, and he will be giving us a glimpse into expert capture. He's going to allow us to actually lay eyes on it and see why it has become such a powerful tool and the tool of choice during the COVID crisis. So over to you, Anthony.
Thanks very much, Bill. So like Bill was saying, I'm going to go through the entire three-step process of capturing it from our expert's point of view, editing and adding any additional assets that we need to, and then scaling it out to all of our end users as necessary. So first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to share my screen. Okay. And like I was saying before, it's going to be the full three-step process. So first person we're actually going to start with is our expert armed with an HMT1 RealWear device who's just going to capture a standard operating procedure by simply just doing the procedure. And we're going to show you how easy it is for them to basically grab the standard operating procedure and then scale it out to dozens or even hundreds of people as necessary. So first step we're going to do is just simply say start new capture with our HMT1 RealWear device. And that's going to start our capture session for this procedure we're going to be running through. So after that, it's going to start us from step one. So now we're recording the first step for our procedure here. And in this case, it's going to be to run an analysis on a mass spectrometer. So the first step of this process is just going to go over to the refrigerator, pull out our calibration samples. And as we're doing this, we have the ability to take a photo in order to gain additional assets to be utilized for a standard operating procedure. So there we just took a picture of the label of the actual box. And now we're going to take another picture of the actual calibration sample from within the box. So that now whenever an end user is going through this, they have absolute confidence they are grabbing essentially the right dilution sample in order to continue with the process here. So after we've concluded with this step, we're just going to say next step in order to start recording step two. So now we have logged all of those assets in for us to utilize. And now we're on to recording step two, which is simply just returning the box back to the refrigerator. After that's done, again, we're just going to say step three, and the voice controls for that HMT1 is just going to pick up our voice command in order to move us on to taking the recording for the next step. And which in this case is going to be to set the pipetter here we see to 500 microliters for mixing the calibration and dilution samples together. And again, we're going to take another photo of that pipetter at 500. And we're just going to do that by saying take photo. If we like it, we can just save that as another asset. If we don't like it, we can get rid of it and take another photo as necessary. I'm going to do the exact same thing for this. So now, again, we have taken these photos as a selection of assets to be utilized as a part of that step. We can also add additional bookmarks to our actual procedure. And then again, those are assets for us to utilize for our step. And we'll be showing how all of these assets are combined together for the actual scaling out of the process when we get to our web-based editor. Okay, so now we're just mixing the sample together. And of course, as I'm going through all this, any voice, any vocal information I want to add to this, anytime I want to say what steps I'm actually doing, that's also added to that. And I'm also recording my entire steps that we're seeing this right here. So this video, along with all of our photos, along with what we're saying, along with any bookmarks, along with any photos, those are all assets stored against the step for us to utilize for our actual process here. Okay. So what we're going to do now, just for the sake of time, is move on from these initial steps, because this is generally how the process works for our expert, onto the actual process of editing the raw capture that we've just grabbed here. So it's going to be a 9-step process, and after we've concluded all of our steps, we're just going to say end capture. Then we're going to save the capture. We're going to enunciate what we want the title of this raw capture session to be. And then after that, we're just going to say accept in order to save that capture session. So now this new mass spec demo is saved. So our next step is to take our RealWare HMT1 device and plug that directly into our computer to upload our raw capture session into our web-based editor. So we're just going to click plus. We're going to add in this new procedure's name. So it's going to just be mass spec demo as far as our web-based editor is concerned. And then we're going to upload the compressed raw capture session into that in order for us to work through there. So here on the right, we can actually see some of our steps have already been pre-populated with the with some of our statements about the actual step with the assets we've taken against that step as well. So there you can see the text that's going to read to our end user's device whenever they go to that step, as well as the individual assets for which we stored against those individual steps there. And along with that, I can add any additional assets to any of these individual steps as I need to, and that's going to include any photographs that were taken either a part of that raw capture session or any other previous raw capture sessions, any screenshots of any documentation I want to include, as well as any other video captures that we've added into this. So our entire asset library is at our fingertips in order to make this standard operating procedure as clear and concise as possible. And in order to add an additional step as we need to, it's a very easy process. All I'm just going to do is click add step, include the text that's going to display to our user's device. So in this case, it's going to be open rack A and place the vial into row number 8. And then I'm just going to drag the asset I want to utilize as part of that process. In this case, it's going to be the raw video capture of step 7, as well as the photo that was taken as a part of step 7. So any asset that when I utilize as a part of the step, it's just a simple drag and drop process in order to add that into that. And here we're going to just simply do these same steps for step 8 and 9. I'm just going to briefly move past that. And for our final step, instead of just adding in photographs and videos of our raw capture, what we're actually going to do is we're going to go to our screenshots for our documentation. We're going to add a diagram showing what a good version of that method program or that analysis program we're running looks like, and also a schematic for the machine that we're going through. So after we've gotten our procedure to the state that we wanted to get, now it's just a matter of publishing it. And publishing it is where we're going to make this accessible to our end user. So anyone who scans this QR code with a phone, a tablet, or with their own wearable, then has access to this procedure. We can also simply export this out as a Word or PDF document for any sort of documentation we need as a part of our standard procedure. So now we're just going to publish our procedure. We're going to publish that against our QR code. So now we're going to switch footsteps to go to an end user who's going to scan this with his own HMT1 device. So here's what he's seeing from his view, from his perspective, from his own HMT1 device. But of course, this is going to dynamically format to fit onto whatever device you're utilizing. So mobile, tablet, or even just random wearables. So here we see the text that we've enumerated as a part of that step, as well as each one of those individual assets. So if we say open, we're going to be able to cycle through all the assets we stored against this step. So of course, the principal asset we've stored against this step is the video that we've taken as a part of that step. If we click next, we can also view the photograph of the photograph of the label that we took as part of that step that we also have access to. So now, armed with all this information at his fingertips, he can go about the procedure with absolute confidence. And here again, after he goes and says next step, it's going to give him the information on the next step to be performed. Again, that's just taking the calibration samples out of the box. And in the case where there's only one asset stored against the step, that asset's going to automatically be displayed as opposed to just cycling through it. So in this example, we only really have video for that pipetter step that we took. So it's going to automatically play that within this frame as he goes to the next step there. So in the cases where someone has a good understanding of steps 1 through 3 or some amount of steps within the procedure, but they don't have a good understanding of future steps, what they can do is they can actually go to the menu, go ahead and go to show step list, and then navigate directly to whatever step it is they're having issues with. So in this case, we're going to go directly to step 9. And step 9 is where we stored both the diagram of the actual LC machine for which we're working on. So if we click open, that's going to open up that diagram for us to have access to. And if we click next, it's also going to give us access to that method program readout for us to compare our results to when we run through this. So that, in a nutshell, is the full 3-step process for capturing your expert's understanding and turn that into a standard operating procedure. So from your expert just doing this procedure they've done day in, day out as easy as possible, you have now the standard operating procedure document that can be shared with dozens or hundreds of people as necessary throughout your entire company. And with that, I'll pass it back off to Bill.
Thank you, Anthony. Much appreciated. So I will retake the screen here, but while I do that, I'll check in with Remy. Remy, have we had any questions from the audience that we would like to address right now?
All right. Thanks again, Bill, and everyone that's on the panel. Great job and great overview of the entire Vuforia suite, as well as the various pieces of issues and what's going on in the world today with COVID, that, you know, where we can really step in and make a difference. So a couple of questions did come in. I'm going to start off with the first one right now. So this is towards probably Blaine or Bill, Dave. So what initial skills are you guys looking for from an entry-level technician, or what post-secondary skills best fit one's needs?
Actually, I will ask Blaine with the real-world technician workforce. So what is it that you are looking for primarily?
I mean, first and foremost, it's the ability to learn and a great attitude. That really is what matters the most. People can learn using a suite of products like you've seen here. You can see that people can learn. Aside from that, the more specific answer is a variety of different trades, Bill, as you mentioned. I mean, electricians and instrumentation, welders. There's all kinds of different trades that are used in an organization like ours, especially with the suite of products that we offer. But really, anybody that's trainable and has a great attitude and a willingness to learn, that's really what makes the most sense right now. And demonstrate that enough. You know, I think that's something that people need to be willing to show.
Yeah, and what's interesting is that as augmented reality takes hold and it's used more and more in the training and onboarding arena, what we are seeing is that you can start onboarding technicians that have actually possibly even lower skill bases, because you do have the ability to both ramp them up a little bit more effectively, as we talked about, support the knowledge retention, and transition those assets with them out into the field, so that as they move into something that may not be as comfortable for them, they have the support and the tools that they need without somebody literally being with them on the job to work their way through those tasks.
Absolutely. We did use augmented reality specifically to cross-train somebody in the field. It wasn't the story I mentioned earlier, but it was one trade being used in place of another. So it worked really well.
I just want to add one more point on that as well. So we've really built our tools to have a very shallow learning curve. And most of our tools can be learned or taught in hours or days. So Blaine, I think you nailed it. Not to mention, you know, we have a plethora of training courses to all of our customers for those who want to get more familiar. So you can really be 100% inexperienced with AR and totally new to it, or a full-blown developer, and the tools can be learned quite rapidly.
All right, thank you.
Thank
Next
you.
question,
Yep.
Remy.
Yep. And the only other question I have is, what does a typical rollout look like for expert capture? So this is probably a good question for, I'd say, Greg or Anthony, if you guys want to jump in on this one.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So expert capture is a very low learning curve. I would say it takes a few tries for your experts to learn the tool and voice commands. And of course, to feel comfortable actually wearing a headset. But I've seen technicians go from having never heard of expert capture to using it with no help needed, all in a single day's workshop. So using the platform, that can be learned in probably a day or so. Really, after editing 1 or 2 procedures, it tends to become second nature. So immediate adoption, or as close as possible to immediate adoption, and of course that means, you know, near immediate value, hopefully.
All right, and we just had one more question come in. How much time can be expected to get a seasoned tech trained to complete a new expert capture video? Yeah,
so sort of what I just spoke to. the tool, you know, to actually build out your first procedure, it might take you a couple tries, but you know, we're talking within days. And you know, I've heard some pretty incredible stories of teams within their first month having built out hundreds of various procedures across their teams. So it's a really quick tool to learn and to use and to get comfortable with. But we're talking, you know, hours and days, not weeks or months.
Okay, if there are any other questions that come in, we can certainly respond to them after the session. So just we're coming up on the top of the hour. I'll do a really quick wrap up here. I just wanted to throw up a slide here to reiterate some of the benefits that we're seeing. I've highlighted 3 that relate specifically to the training and onboarding arena. So decreased training time, 60%, new hire training improvement, reduction in new hire training time, 50%, improved knowledge transfer, 66% improvement. At the bottom there's the Forrester stats. Those stats come from a very interesting report called the Total Economic Impact of PTC's Vuforia product line that Forrester published this report, I think, back in the fall. But I've got my email address down at the bottom. If anybody would like to access a copy of that report, we can certainly shoot you a link. So feel free to send a request over and we will get that across to you. So in closing, I'd like to say thank you to everybody, all of our speakers. I'd like to say thank you to everybody that participated and stayed with us here right to the end. I hope you found the session informative and wish you all the very best for today.
All right. Thanks again, everyone. And the recording will be made available in case you guys want to review something that was brought up today. And thanks again for attending.